I went to my daughter's rehearsal dinner, but on the morning of her wedding, she told her in-laws that her stepmother was the one who reared her and threw me out, calling me a pitiful nobody she was embarrassed of. I told her this, but her daughter contacted me crying because her father and stepmother had deceived her by slamming these documents in front of her. As a 48-year-old woman, I need an unbiased viewpoint on what transpired at my daughter's rehearsal dinner for 25 women and the subsequent events. This has been bothering me, and I'm wondering if I made a mistake and how I handled it. To give you some context, my 50-year-old ex-husband and I got divorced when my daughter was 10 years old. He got married again a year later, and his new wife, let's call her S, has always attempted to act as a supermom in my daughter's life. Her dad is much wealthier than I am, and he made sure to show her that. As a result, my daughter always preferred her father and her stepmother, and hated me for not supporting her in the same manner. I tried my best to co-parent amicably, but things were always a little uncomfortable. It would be an understatement to say that our relationship has been difficult. I made an effort to be there for her and show her love, even though it has been difficult. Now fast forward to the wedding rehearsal dinner, which I was truly looking forward to attending. Since I had assisted her with part of the wedding preparation and costs, I felt that we were in a good spot. But as the wedding day drew nearer, my daughter started to distance herself from me. For days, she would not return my calls or messages, and when she did, she seemed very uninterested. The rehearsal supper seemed like a perfect opportunity for us to catch up and perhaps resolve whatever had been upsetting her. I had anticipated that this occasion would strengthen our bond, and that the wedding would provide us a new beginning, but boy was I mistaken. My daughter took the stage during the meal to present her soon-to-be-in-laws to the group. "This is S, the woman who raised me," she explained when she arrived at her stepmother. As she lifted her glass to her stepmother, she smiled proudly and joyfully without even glancing at me. Considering that I did raise her, it felt like a slap in the face. At least I believed I did. As everyone else grinned and lifted their glasses to her stepmother, I just sat there in awe. I didn't seem to be there. I didn't want to ruin the evening for her, so I kept quiet and tried not to cry. I kept telling myself that my feelings were irrelevant because this was her night. After supper, my daughter approached me and asked if we could have a private conversation. Since I assumed she wanted to either apologize or clarify what she had said earlier, I was actually a little relieved that she called me aside. This was not true. Rather, she truly scolded me, telling me that she had no intention of inviting me to her wedding in the first place. She said she was ashamed of me and that I was a pitiful nothing. Then she threw me out and told me to go. The amount of suffering I experienced is beyond words. I never thought my own daughter would talk to me in such a manner. I mean, her voice was so full of hatred that I felt terrible about myself. Even when it seemed like she didn't want me around, I had tried to be there for her for years. I returned to my hotel room in silence, since I didn't want to make a scene or dispute with her in front of her future. I was devastated beyond belief. That night I didn't get any sleep. Rather, I simply played the entire evening repeatedly in my mind. Additionally, I couldn't help but think of all the numerous instances in which my daughter had treated me rudely. She never shied away from voicing her opinions, no matter how cruel they were. The only distinction was that, terrible about myself. Even when it seemed like she didn't want me around, I had tried to be there for her for years. I returned to my hotel room in silence, since I didn't want to make a scene or dispute with her in front of her future. I was devastated beyond belief. That night I didn't get any sleep. Rather, I simply played the entire evening repeatedly in my mind. Additionally, I couldn't help but think of all the numerous instances in which my daughter had treated me rudely. She never shied away from voicing her opinions, no matter how cruel they were. The only distinction was that, in most cases, I could dismiss her remarks as typical of teens. There was a big difference this time. She was speaking to me as a fully grown adult who was sober, so she meant every word she said. I was unable to understand why she detested me so much. I sobbed so much and felt so sorry for myself that I decided it would be best for us both if I returned home. I made the decision to drive home as soon as the sun came up, so I packed my bags. I packed my bags into my car and left the hotel early the following morning. My daughter called me while I was sitting in my car getting ready to drive. She was going crazy. She told me that she had been deceived by her father and stepmother. They had apparently shown her some papers that morning. They said my daughter would not inherit their fortune because she was no longer a member of their family. In essence, they were cutting off their financial relationship with her. The problem is that my daughter decided to enroll in a very costly institution to earn a degree that she has never used. She had no idea what to do when it came time to choose her institution, and she had no desire to study a certain subject further. I recommended that she spend a few years at a community college to broaden her horizons before choosing a higher university depending on her interests. When my daughter finished from high school, Her stepmother insisted that she attend college right away, promising to cover the cost of any university as long as my daughter earned a degree. In an attempt to persuade my daughter to get a degree, S even made the extra effort to show her brochures for incredibly costly universities. I did my best to explain to my daughter that I didn't have that type of money. Originally, my husband and I were supposed to cover my daughter's college expenses together, but if she had decided to attend the universities that S was recommending, I would not have been able to do so. My daughter assumed that because of my financial struggles, I didn't want her to attend college at all. She repeatedly informed me that I would have taken care of her the way S always did if I truly wanted her to have a happy life. She believed that I was too preoccupied with my envy for S to truly take care of her. That was obviously never the case. My ex-husband's money, which I did not have, was what S was spending instead of her own. I made every effort to convey this to my daughter, but she would not listen and chose instead to enroll in one of the pricey universities that S had recommended. To get away from me, she picked one that was far from our home state. At her father's suggestion, she took out a school loan and stopped talking to me for 4 years. Her father and stepmother reportedly only encouraged her to take out the loan because they lacked the necessary funds, despite their assurances that they would handle her college loans. They had been providing her with the money to repay her loan gradually but consistently. However, they forced that loan entirely on her after deciding to cut her off financially. My kid has no money of her own and has never worked a day in her life. She was able to live on the monthly allowance her father had been sending her, since her fiancé also lacks that type of money. She has no chance of repaying the debt without really finding employment. She sobbed uncontrollably about feeling deceived and even claimed that I was the only person who could assist her. At first, she pleaded with me to speak with her father and stepmother, but I declined. She attempted to get me to speak with her father by using logic and guilt. She informed me that she and her spouse would have to struggle for years to repay her loan if I didn't speak with him. She told me that her spouse couldn't use her debt to worsen his life because he already had educational loans of his own. She pleaded with me to speak with her father and persuade him to reconsider, but I didn't see the point in speaking with my ex-husband when all he did was ruin my life. I advised my daughter to acquire a job and support her husband if she didn't want to ruin his life. She became even more irate with me when I attempted to reassure her that what was happening to her was not the end of the world, because she believed I was the cause of her father cutting her off. My daughter snapped at me and demanded that I settle her debt. I'll confess that I was angry by this time. I questioned her about if she truly believed she could spend the rest of her life living off of her father's wealth. I reminded her that I had warned her against attending a pricey institution because she would have difficulties in the future, particularly after her father suggested that she take out a student loan rather than repaying it on his own. I reminded her that she would lash out at me and stop talking to me for a week, or at least until I apologized and made every effort to mend our relationship if I attempted to subtly tell her how wonderful it would be for her to get employment and use her degree. This occurred when she eventually gave me permission to speak with her after graduating from college. I informed her that it was time for her to start acting like a grown lady because she was one. I also told her that I had no real method of helping her, because I was a pitiful nothing she accused me of being petty and self-centered for bringing up an incident from the previous evening. After that, I drove home and hung up the phone. I didn't want her to call me again, so I turned off my phone and skipped the wedding. All of it made me feel so much lighter, even though I know I was quite harsh in what I said. She was my daughter, though, and I never wanted to say anything hurtful to her, so I had been holding those things inside of me. I never became upset with her when she mistreated me or insulted me. In retrospect, I may have made a mistake, but I still tried my hardest to let her know how much she meant to me and that I would always be there for her. In particular, she had the audacity to phone me the morning after calling me a pitiful nobody without even considering apologizing, which made me dislike the way she treated me. Rather, she somehow managed to make my statements seem like my responsibility. The following day, I checked my phone and saw hundreds of messages from my daughter and other family members, the most of whom were aware of the challenges I was facing in parenting her. In addition to refusing to assist her, my daughter felt that I was being extremely self-centered by missing her wedding and spoiling her special day. Our family members are split. When I conveyed the scenario to my relatives on my side of the family, they were supportive. All of our other family members, however, chastised me and called me cold-hearted for leaving my daughter when she most needed me. I'm really conflicted. While I'm happy that I prioritized myself for the first time, I also feel awful for upsetting my daughter and being unable to support her. I want to help her, I promise. I barely make $40,000 a year, but it hurt to hear the pain in her voice when she contacted me that day. I truly don't have enough money to assist my daughter in repaying her loan. I think I should speak with my ex-husband and just face the consequences. It would be possible for me to request that he show our daughter a little more consideration and consideration for her circumstances. That won't necessarily work out, in my opinion. However, I will stop at nothing to ensure her happiness. I simply don't know how to feel or what to do. I need assistance. I feel like a failure and stuck. She hasn't returned any of my texts or calls since I attempted to contact her earlier today. Because of my actions and my words, I'm starting to feel like a true monster. I'm quite proud of myself for standing my ground and not attending my daughter's wedding. I would like to thank everyone who reads this and gives me input in advance of Update 1. First of all, hello. I would want to express my gratitude to every one of the commenters on this post. I'm glad my post received so much attention, even though I didn't anticipate it. Believe me, I haven't felt that appreciated and seen in a very long time, and I received a ton of kind and affirming remarks. Therefore, I sincerely appreciate all of the comments. Before I give my update, I would like to answer a few queries that were raised in the comments. First, do I realize how pampered my daughter is? Yes, I regrettably know how pampered she is. I understand how frustrating reading my post is. It's far more difficult than that, even while I appreciate all the advice to cut off my daughter. She's my daughter. I gave her the life she has by carrying her for 9 months. She is my delight and pride. She can't just be removed from my life. I can accept that she isn't the greatest person in the world, but I can't leave her. 2. My ex-husband and I got divorced, but why? Many people questioned whether I did something to my ex-husband or whether he cheated on me, which led to our divorce. I don't believe that talking about my personal life here is necessary. However, I must admit that our divorce was unpleasant. I didn't think the father of my daughter was the greatest husband, and I filed for a divorce after I'd had enough. He took it upon himself to make me regret that choice since he was angry with me for it. For years, he battled for complete custody of my daughter. In order to use it against me in court, he carefully examined everything I did. Not long after our divorce, he married a model to prove to me that he was happier without me. Even though he never specifically said anything negative about me to my daughter, his deeds screamed more than words ever could. 3. Do I despise the stepmother of my daughter? No, we simply have a really complex relationship. Every time I've met her, she's been kind to me, but only out of sympathy. Once more, I have absolutely no issue with that. I was relieved that my ex-husband was at last content, and I couldn't give a damn about his new relationship. The way my kid's stepmother decided to raise my daughter was what I did find problematic. She persuaded me to give up my parental rights for my kid for years in order to adopt her and become her legal parent. She informed my daughter that I did not want her to be the mother of my daughter, but she never became angry with me for saying no. For a long time, that destroyed my relationship with my daughter. Naturally, my daughter understood after her stepmother clarified her meaning, but the harm had already been done. Apart from that, my daughter always tried to outdo me anytime I did something for her. My daughter's stepmother would butt in and tell my daughter that she was free to do anything she wanted whenever I told her that she couldn't do something, or even if I tried to discipline her by grounding her. The fact that his wife was undermining my role as our daughter's mother was obviously of no concern to my ex-husband. He said that his wife was just as much of a mother to our daughter as I was, which made him laugh a lot. Yes, my daughter's stepmother made raising my kid challenging, but she was never explicitly nasty or harsh to me. There's nothing bad about her that I feel. Yes, I never had any bad feelings towards her, even though she was the reason my daughter stopped talking to me for 4 years. My ex-husband is undoubtedly the one I hold responsible for everything. He was using the whole thing as a ruse to exact revenge on me for upsetting his ideal family. All I want is for my daughter to witness that. Let's go on to the update. I didn't hear back from my daughter for a week. I was so thrilled that she answered my phone that I cannot express how glad I am. She was obviously furious with me, and at first she hardly answered. However, she instantly brightened when I assured her that I would speak with her father. I am aware that many of the comments advised me to refuse to speak to my spouse and to stand my stance. However, I came to the realization that I could set aside my pride and support my daughter instead. Don't get me wrong, I'm proud that I held my kid accountable for the first time, but she still required assistance. I also told her about that. I explained to her that I would only speak with her father because I loved her. I informed her that I didn't give a damn about her passing or anything else. All that mattered to me was that she was sad, and I wanted to put things right. After sobbing and apologizing for her bad treatment of me, she told me that her marriage was in trouble. I was surprised. I mean, just 2 weeks had passed. She disclosed that her husband did not approve of her large loan. It seems that they had planned extensively for their post-marriage plans, including property ownership and establishing a family. Her loan will cause a significant delay in all of those objectives, and her husband was thinking of divorcing her because he didn't want to be forced to pay off her debt rather than pursue his own goals. I was sorry for her. When all the significant individuals in her life abandoned her, I couldn't even begin to understand how she must have felt. I assured her that I would try my best to assist her. However, I also informed her that there was a very high probability that her father would not hear anything I had to say. She attempted to dispute it, but I quickly silenced her by giving her a couple instances of how her father had totally ignored me. Despite her extreme distress, I assured her that I would do everything in my power to help her get back on her feet. In exchange, I only asked that she genuinely try to obtain the things she desires. Fortunately, she appeared to see the light and promised to follow my instructions if her relationship with her father did not work out. Even though it's terrible, her expression of gratitude at the end of the call was the most genuine she had ever shown. That only strengthened my resolve to support her. And that brings me to today. We agreed to meet at her father's house this weekend so we could discuss when I called him. I don't think my daughter will benefit much from this. At the very least, though, my kid has had a very enlightening experience. I'm confident that she will be a different person no matter what happens next. Additionally, I hope she would involve me in her life. Much more. Good luck to me. I'll give you an update following this weekend. Second update. I was too emotionally spent from the weekend to provide an update yesterday. Let me get started, though. My daughter insisted on accompanying me on the day I was scheduled to visit my ex-husband. Although I wasn't really sure if that was a good idea, I concluded that she should be present so she could hear everything that was said. We went to her father's house together after I picked up my daughter from her home. My ex-husband knew what we were going to discuss, so he hardly acknowledged us when we arrived. His wife entered and gave us the kindest greeting she could. However, the mood was somewhat tight. I brought up the subject and tried my best to persuade them to assist my daughter with her loan. They wouldn't listen to me, so I figured I could at least work out a deal with them to cease giving her a monthly stipend and just assist her in repaying her loan. My daughter eventually joined in as well in an attempt to persuade her father, but it just seemed to infuriate her stepmother. Her stepmother finally lost it and told her that she wished she had never shown her kindness. She told my kid that she and my ex-husband had never experienced anything worse than her. She said to my daughter that she was a threat to her father and spoiled. She added that she only showed her kindness because of my ex-husband and because she felt sorry for him. Because she knew those pricey universities were distant from home, she purposefully displayed those pamphlets, she told my daughter, thinking that would be the perfect gift for my ex-husband. She also disclosed that she had promised my ex-husband that she would only show my daughter kindness till she married, following her marriage. She informed my ex-husband that he would need to sever all financial connections with my daughter and allow her to handle everything on her own. When he promised to assist my daughter with her college loan, my ex-husband accepted those terms without considering it. My daughter is obviously devastated, and I'm really sorry for her. When her stepmother lost her temper, she and I hurried away. There was no regret on my ex-husband's face. In fact, he appeared relieved, which infuriated me. However, I was too preoccupied in comforting my daughter to say anything. I dropped her off back at her apartment when I felt she was more at ease and doing well. She was hysterical when she called me a few hours later. Before she told me that her husband was planning to apply for the annulment of their marriage because he didn't want to be bound to someone with her level of debt, I finally succeeded in calming her down. My heart ached for my young daughter. I hurried to her place and tried my best to spend time with her. We spoke and cried till 4 in the morning. I believe we made significant progress in mending our relationship. Even though I wish my daughter had never experienced such agony, I'm happy that at least she has changed for the better. And while I am aware that it is too soon to determine that, I firmly believe that she is moving towards improvement. For now, that's all. I'll try my hardest to be there for my daughter and support her as much as I can. I appreciate all of your well wishes and care. If there are any more significant updates, I'll be back. Update 3. So, it's been around 4 months since my last visit. To be honest, a lot has transpired, and I totally forgot about this post. However, I happened to recollect that I finally had some downtime today. Here is the update I promised you everyone. I went over to support my daughter and be there for her in general, after her husband informed her that he would apply for the annulment of their marriage. Her husband stayed at a motel the whole time, and he did follow through on his promises. Indeed, my daughter was a complete mess. After a while, it became frightening. My daughter was screaming uncontrollably, refused to eat, and hardly left her bed. I was with her the whole time, of course, and did my best to assist her. After a while, it was starting to impact me too. I was able to persuade her to seek therapy as a result. I assumed she had other problems to deal with in addition to her husband abandoning her and learning that her stepmother had never loved her. Thus, her best option was treatment. Fortunately, I was correct. I started to see that she had greatly improved. In order for us to fully resolve our relationship, she even recommended that we both attend family therapy. That made me so thrilled I can't even express it. However, we did begin therapy together, and since then, our relationship has developed significantly. Do not misunderstand me. I'm still concerned that things could change suddenly, and I'm working with my daughter on that. However, I assisted her in locating a respectable employment once she began to feel better. It wasn't fancy, and she would need to put in a lot of effort to lead a respectable life. However, I believe that a beginning point is preferable than none at all. At least my kid has taken a positive step, and for that I am grateful. Her constant fatigue plus the fact that she isn't leading the life she used to make me feel sorry for her. However, given her situation, this is the best she can do. In addition, my daughter and I have become closer. Despite everything that transpired, I spent 3 months with her, and this is the first month that I haven't seen her face every day. Naturally, we still get together once a week and make it a point to phone one another each day. I greatly value the sincere apologies my daughter has expressed for the way she treated me as a child. I don't know what my filthy ex-husband and his wife are up to. His side of the family has been arguing a lot and is now not living together, according to the last I heard from them. I believe that my ex-husband harbors some remorse for the treatment of my daughter, but he has decided to vent his feelings on the person who is closest to him. Well, neither my daughter nor I can say that we feel sorry for him. She has severed all communication with her father and will not even associate with him. Even though she and I still have a long way to go, I'm ecstatic to have my daughter back at last.